Yo, Kendrick Lamar's Reincarnated is one of the craziest songs as far as storytelling and wildest twist in a song ever. Let's get right into the breakdown. When we're analyzing these biblical narratives he raps about, we have to remember to keep in context is relative to hip hop. It might get a little confusing, but remember this. Kendrick, the rapper, plays the role of the prophet. The music industry is Babylon, and that will make us, the culture, the people, or the Israelites. And as I stated in a previous video, Watch the Party Die was the judgment of the industry. This song, Reincarnated, was his chance at redemption, and that'll come up later. Off the bat, in the first two bars, he lets us know who he is. I got this fire burning in me from within. Concentrated thoughts from who I used to be, I'm shedding skin. Remember that foreshadowing. Now, Kendrick Lamar said he did past life regressions, which is when you're under hypnosis and your subconscious mind is access to recall your past life experiences. And in reincarnation, your soul keeps coming back to learn different lessons throughout those lifetimes. And in all his reincarnations, how he chooses to use this gift is what determines his fate. When he starts his first form of life story, it starts with his father kicking him out. And in his lifetime, he had great success with music, but he used his gift to manipulate power. I don't know if he meant for these past lives to be specific people, but I'm looking at them like archetypes. In his next lifetime, he came back as a black woman, and she had the gift, but she was a slave to her own vices and undisciplined. And that caused her father to turn her back on her, and her vices, drugs, ultimately led to her demise. And we can look at those incarnations as stages of hip hop, where we went to a gluttonous, materialistic stage and then a over sexualized, drug induced stage. Now his current incarnation is Kendrick, and he feels he succeeded. Remember, this is in the context of hip hop, so he feels he raised the bar lyrically, his integrity is intact, and he speaks for the people. And he's not falling for the faults of his previous incarnations. So in his conversation with God, God lets him know through all his good deeds, he still has to heal his heart and not be in war with himself, which is part of his original sin, which God knows, and he refers to Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14, 12 through 17 tells of the fall of Lucifer, who's the fallen angel of music. And that's who keep reincarnating through these artists. And that's why the culture has been manipulated through music to be materialistic, to turn through our vices to drugs, and constantly at war with each other. But through Kendrick's version, Lucifer is redeemed and vows to push the culture forward righteously. So Kendrick said he rewrote the double stories just to take our power back. Our power is our influence through music. So as I spoke about in my Watch the Party Die video, this is the evolution of hip-hop spiritually. A cultural redemption. Not for nothing, he managed to put himself in a different tier with this song. Storytelling like Nas, paying homage to Pac with the flow, also paying homage to Eminem with the flow, which reminds you of the Renegade flow, which is Jay-Z's song. Now, the only one left is Kendrick. That's the top 5.
Kendrick starts out the Not Like Us music video saying, I am reincarnated. I was stargazing, life goes on, I need all my babies, and then he goes on with other cool stuff that he said. But those first 3 lines, if we break them down real quick, in Buried Alive interlude, he says, then I died, as the last lyrics of the song. As he says, he's entering into a double life. So he buries himself alive, he dies, he's now reincarnated, right? The dirt is getting brushed off of his shoulders and he's ready to move on with his family, and not just those babies, but the stargazing, right? The work of like connecting dots in the sky to make a constellation. I make music that electrifies them, and he does it with all the stars. Okay? He's saying he needs all of his babies as life goes on. Pharrell has a movie coming out, right? About how Legos come together piece by piece. There's a heart in 5 parts. I would not be surprised if Kendrick Lamar shows up as a feature on the Clips album. And there's a lot of other stuff I wouldn't be surprised about. We'll talk about it on a podcast episode, Patreon and bio for free.
I'll just be happy when y'all stop comparing Drake and Kendrick. That's when I'll be happy. Because if you have not learned by now, there is no comparison. And I don't mean that as a shot to Drake. I'm just saying, as I've always said, they are 2 different rappers in 2 different categories. See, when I listen to Drake, when I hear Drake drop, I'm looking for a club banger, something to shake your booty to, whatever, right? When I hear Kendrick dropped, I'm going to listen to be educated. I'm going to get some kind of spiritual motivation. You understand what I'm saying? It's a difference. I have never listened to a Drake album and been like, damn, he was really speaking there. He really said something. Never. He might have talked his shit. He might have popped off. But it's never the same. And it's never going to be the same. And I wish y'all would really stop comparing these two. Moving on. Wait, before I even move on. You don't think so? Listen to Reincarnated and tell me if Drake could ever. You'd be doing a disservice to yourself to try to compare and think that that man could ever do what Kendrick did on that track. I don't want to hear it. Anyway, moving on. It does sadden me that Wayne decided to take the low road. Cause like, can we go back to days when you had to pick up a phone and call somebody? You couldn't pick up the phone and ask Kendrick, yo, let's just hash this out. What was you trying to say? You had to take it to Twitter to get all your stands involved. The ones who didn't vote for you to even be in the Super Bowl. Cause I heard they asked the city. So if they asked the city and the city said Kendrick, who we mad at again? Anyway, I give it a 9 out of 10. That whole album. I've listened to it about 10 times. Probably about to listen to it again. It is what it is.
He did it again. He did it again. Another great album, but one of my favorite songs is Reincarnated. Kendrick dives into his past life regressions, actually recounting some of his past lives. Let's look at the lyrics. Truth be told, I've been battling my soul, trying to navigate the real and fake, cynical about the judgment day. This right here is supposed to be, I did past life regression last year and it fucked me up, reincarnated on this earth for 100 plus. Now you can pause to read this if you want, but in this life, he says that in Michigan 1947, he was a really good guitar player and that his father kicked him out because he wouldn't listen to him. He said that he was basically traveling, trying to find his place in the world, but that he was very talented and that he would use this talent to manipulate people and to get money and to get women. And then in the other life he mentions, which you can pause to read, he basically says that he was a woman and a very talented vocalist. And that he ended up being successful in this life, but he was addicted to drugs, or she was addicted to drugs. He says, I needed drugs. To me, an 8-ball was like penicillin. Fuck love, my happiness was in that brown sugar. Sex and melodies gave me hope when nobody's looking. And he says that he died with syringes pinched in him. Now, in the third verse, Kendrick starts talking about his present life, his life as Kendrick Lamar. Now, a lot of us know about Kendrick's life because he talks about it all the time. But you can see right here, he says that his father kicked him out, but now that he's older, he realizes that ego and pride was holding him back from forgiving his father. And the rest of the verse is basically him talking to his father, asking him if he's good now. Did he get it right? Did he make up for the life that he was living before? Which is why he got kicked out. Right here it says, son, you do well, but your heart is closed. I can tell residue that linger from your past creates a cell. He's saying that his heart was closed due to all the things he experienced and the life he had when he was growing up. This is one of my favorite parts of the verse right here. Kendrick is telling his father that he's not perfect and he has urges, but he holds them down. And his father says, but your pride has to die. So Kendrick says, okay, show me. How do I do that? And his father tells him, tell me every good thing you've done, right? So Kendrick names off a list, trying to push peace in LA. And then his father says, but you love war. And Kendrick says, no, I don't. Oh, yes, you do. Then tell me the truth. Every individual is only a version of you. How can they forgive when there's no forgiveness in your heart? And I think that is so good because it reminds us of an extremely important lesson. There's going to be no true forgiveness for you or anything that you've done if you cannot forgive yourself. If there's no forgiveness in your heart, nobody can truly forgive you because they're all just a reflection of you. So that all that you're going to be receiving back is the reflection of non-forgiveness. That's why he says every individual is only a version of you. And another thing that I really love about this verse is that Kendrick actually kind of compares himself to Lucifer, to the devil. Because as a lot of us know, the story of Lucifer goes that when he was trying to take God's power, take Yahweh's power, Yahweh saw this and said, brother, you can't do that. You got to get out of here. He compares their stories because he's saying that his father kicks him out for not wanting to listen to him, Kendrick didn't want to have any authority over him. As you can see right here, it says, you fell out of heaven because you was anxious, didn't like authority, only searched to be heinous. And right here, his father tells him, can you promise that you won't take your gifts for granted? And Kendrick says, I promise that I'll use my gifts to bring understanding. He says, I vow my life just to live in harmony now. Father says, you crushed a lot of people keeping their thoughts in captivity. And Kendrick says, and I'm ashamed that I ever created that enemy. Then let's rejoice where we at. I rewrote the devil's story just to take our power back. And that is such a good line to end it on, because what he's saying is that he rewrote his own story. He said, fuck my past lives, fuck who I used to be, I'm gonna rewrite my story. That's why he's saying I rewrote the devil's story just to take our power back. Because like I said, he was comparing himself to Lucifer, right? The whole idea that he didn't want to have any authority over him. He didn't want to listen to his father. He just wanted to be out in the streets, drugs, guns, money, rapping. But as he got older, he realized how dumb it was and that his father was just trying to keep him away from all that. All I can say is, this is the GOAT.
That Reincarnated on Kendrick Lamar's new album is hands down the best song on the album. Why is that? He goes so deep within himself of his guilt, of his shame, that he says, damn, am I the devil? And addresses that. He addresses it to the point where he understands that he has to make atonement for past lives that he may have even meditated on. He feels the guilt of other people. Now, as somebody that's been diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic, sometimes we do take the guilt of others and place them on ourselves. We have a big burden like the world on your back. Right now, the wrong time to be fucking with Kendrick, bro. That nigga is in deep state. He's digging within himself and fighting. That's the wrong nigga to be playing with, man. Drake need to take the pigtails out his head and wave that thing. That nigga dangerous right now.
I want to talk about Kendrick Lamar. Yes, again, I know. The album is really just doing something to me, but today I really only want to talk about Reincarnated and how insanely good it is. And something that I noticed. So as I'm listening to Reincarnated, now I'm at the tail end of the song where there's a back and forth between Kendrick and God, and Kendrick being like, hey, have I done enough? And God being like, no, you still need to check that ego, okay? You're really not pushing peace in LA. You love war, da-da-da-da. Although at the very, very, very end, it's revealed that that's actually a conversation between God and Satan, and Kendrick is like the vessel. I realized that Kendrick has these back and forth moments where God checks his ego every single time in his music, and that's what I want to talk about. So who would I be if I did not make a playlist of all the other songs in that category? Kendrick Lamar, Untitled 1, A Monker Award from the Heavens that played the Symphony Thunder like number 4. Then I heard What Have You Did For Me. Kendrick goes on to list the things that he has done, and he says, Geez Louise, I made To Pimp a Butterfly for you. God said, not enough. Sing About Me, I'm Down to Thirst. Don't really have to get into that. It's obvious at the end. Again, how much a dollar costs. I mean, the whole story really was about how God shows up through different people, and Kendrick needs to be humble. Have you ever read Exodus 14? A humble man is all we ever need. Tell me how much a dollar costs. Do I need to say anything? I'm going to throw Count Me Out in there at the very beginning of the song. The very beginning. One of these lives I'm going to make it right with the wrongs I've done. That's one of you now with the Father, Son, till then I fight. Then again at the end where it's, Lord, I try my best. You said it's not my best. I came up out my flesh. Some things I must confess. And then back to Reincarnated with this back and forth where Kendrick is like, have I done enough? God is telling him your pride has to die. He's saying, okay, Father, show me how. Let me know if this is something that you all notice and if I missed any songs in my playlist. This definitely was on my mind so heavy today. Hey, it's Sunday. And Kendrick really be in a fight with his ego. And I do too. Okay? I do too. That's why I relate to him so much.
I just finished Reincarnated. There's a lot that just happened. Rapping like Tupac to begin the song was fascinating. And I thought maybe that would be the thematic, but then when he said in Detroit in 1947, I was like, wait, woo. Just back that up a little bit. And then the second verse being Billie Holiday.
and then reincarnated as Kendrick Lamar, and then having the conversation with God at the end. That was so fascinating. Like, spoilers if you haven't listened to it, but like taking the story of a fallen angel that you find in Isaiah and then turning that into the story of like how these top musicians across time have just been the incarnation of that angel is so, I don't know, I need to sit with that. I need to digest that one a little bit. I'm interested to hear the second half of the album now. It seems like that might be the pivot point. And there's also 12 songs on this. Like this, I'm sure Cole Kushner is sitting back writing notes right now like there are 12 songs, there are 12 tribes of Israel. But I'm excited to listen to the second half of the album. But Reincarnated, that was a fascinating listen. I'll have to listen to that. And he has one of these, I think, on every album, right? How Much a Dollar Costs, right? Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst, you know, like he has these, and so I'm intrigued now. So happy listening. Kendrick dropped. I love y'all. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
My favorite 3 lines off of Kendrick Lamar's GNX will convince you on how good he is. Tell me every deed that you've done and what you do it for. Kendrick is talking to God, and God is asking him about the difference he's making on earth. Kendrick replies, I kept 100 institutions paid. He's talking about the communication company he founded with Dave Free, the academic courses Kendrick's work has inspired, and his Power of Hip Hop course, which examines themes in Lamar's work like class and racial injustice. God continues, okay, tell me more. Kendrick replies, I put 100 hoods on one stage. Kendrick Lamar is talking about his pop-out show, where Kendrick was able to perform with different gangs in the same room with no problems. God replies, okay, tell me more. Kendrick replies, I'm trying to push peace in LA. God replies, but you want war. During the song, Kendrick Lamar goes back and forth with God, but he is outwardly doing introspection. This is what sets Kendrick Lamar apart. His work is autobiographical. He's talking about himself.
Okay, so a few of you wanted me to break down Kendrick Lamar's Reincarnated, and for that, I don't know if I can do that in one video. But I will give you a breakdown of what I think is the most interesting part. You probably could have guessed it yourself, but my favorite part of the song is when Kendrick Lamar transitions from telling a story about himself into the devil. Now, at first, he sets this up by talking about his father in a way that he was talking about John Lee Hooker's father in the first verse. Okay, bad relationship, getting kicked out, and they continue to go back and forth with Kendrick in the father's voice. Obviously, that turns into God, as Kendrick and God are having a conversation, and then switches to, I could tell you who you are. From that point on, Kendrick is no longer Kendrick. God then mentions Isaiah 14, which talks about the king of Babylon, and you can pause and read if you want to. Now, in this conversation, it focuses on music a lot, and I want you to understand why. At first, we're thinking Kendrick Lamar is the person embodying each person to tell the story, when in reality, the person or being that's being reincarnated is the devil. He may not be the entire person, but he's at least getting passed on, causing them to sin. Also, I don't know if Kendrick meant this, but some theologians say that the devil was made out of musical instruments and was also the angel of worship before he was casted down. So it makes sense for him to embody musical figures, per se.
One of the most fascinating parts of this new Kendrick album, GNX, for me, is when he starts talking about past life regression. Now, he's talked about past life regression before on Mr. Morale when he's like, I must have had 3,000 wives and 3,000 lives. But he gets into it a little deeper on this album, specifically in the song Reincarnated. So past life regression is a type of hypnotherapy that uses hypnosis to help people access memories of past lives. So the goal is to gain information that can help improve their current life. There's a bunch of different techniques that are used to be able to access these past lives. And in this album, he talks about how he had this type of hypnotherapy and that it messed him up. On Reincarnated, he imagines himself as John Lee Hooker, who is a famous jazz guitarist, and also as Dinah Washington, who is a jazz pianist and vocalist. And I guess the idea is that like they have now taken over his body, or he's been them in a past life. And I think another thing he's saying is like these Black artists that were talented and had their flaws and their shortcomings still became great. And that's what he aspires to do, is like lead their legacy and like make it continue through him. And on the song, he also sounds like Pac. So it can only be assumed that he is reincarnated as Pac as well. This album is so crazy to me because on Whacked Up Murals, he He says, old soul, I probably built them pyramids. He's talking about aliens on Rosecrans. We gonna see the future first, which is obviously a nod to Frank Ocean, but even that, he's talking about his kids. If you're really listening, he's talking about so much, and it's like, this man is on another level. Like, what is he talking about?
In order to understand Reincarnated, you gotta understand the Bible. On the surface level, Reincarnated sound like a tribute song to Tupac. A response to Drake using AI to get Tupac's voice on the record. But when you dig deep, you'll really see how much of a musical genius he is. This is the reoccurring theme of each verse. In verse 1, Kendrick speaks about a past life. And in that past life, his father kicked him out of the house because he wouldn't listen to him. He even went about describing why he did it. He didn't care about his father's influence, he only loved what he was doing. He was being egotistical. And he knew he was gifted as a musician. The most talented where I'm from, but I had to rebel. Even in verse 2, he claims in his second life he was a seductive vocalist. His voice was angelic, straight from heaven. But similar to verse 1, there's a part where his father turns his back on him or disowns him. My daddy looked the other way, he saw sin in me. See, verse 3 is all about redemption. But before we get to that, verse 1 and verse 2 share the same tendencies. It's similar to the fall of Lucifer. Although being one of the most talented angels, ego and pride consumed him. And that's what led to the rebellion. The most talented where I'm from, but I had to rebel. Seductive vocalist, my voice was angelic straight from heaven. There's the boasting. Then at the bottom, my daddy looked the other way, he saw sin in me. There's the fall. Now at the end of verse 3, we get I rewrote the devil's story just to take the power back. Use that last part as a reference. Because verse 3 is about redemption. My father kicked me out the house, I finally forgive him. Ego and pride had me looking at him with resentment. I'm old enough to understand the way I was living. Now instead of refollowing that pattern of getting kicked out and leading a life of sin, he tucked his ego and his pride and got himself in check. Understanding those tendencies could lead him to a life like his previous ones. Instead of rebelling, he submit. See, here he say, I didn't even gloat, even told him no. Took control of my fleshly body. But here's where we get the fall of Lucifer. Explained in verse 3. Even though Kendrick didn't want to believe it, this is who he was. That's why Kendrick say, I rewrote the devil's story to take our power back. Because he no longer wanted centuries of manipulating man with music. He wanted to finally get it right. I mean, there's so many meanings to this one song. On surface level, it's a reincarnation of Tupac. The aggression, the flow, even the beat is a previous Tupac and Outlaw song. Then you have the reference between God and Lucifer. Then verse 1 and verse 2 could really be connected to actual lives of musicians, past musicians. I saw someone say verse 2 is about Billie Holiday. This is what set Kendrick apart from everyone else. No one can do this. Not Drake, not J. Cole, nobody. Man, this song got my head hurting.
Here's a breakdown of Reincarnated by Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick mentions something called past life regression. What this is a technique that uses hypnosis to recover your memories from your past life. But a trained therapist or a hypnotist will put you through these visualizations to bring you awareness from your past life. You notice he has 3 verses, each from a different perspective of one of his past lives, all the way up until he gets to his current life, which is Kendrick Lamar. But then he goes even further. He starts to rap from the perspective of the archangel Sandalphon, which is the archangel of music in the heavens. Sandalphon and God then have a conversation about how God sent him down to take over the bodies of people and rule through music. Then talked about how Sandalphon used that power to misguide the people of Earth. Kendrick begins to apologize and says that from now on, he will use his power for understanding. Now, the first and second verse, I got to do more research on. I feel like the second verse is about Whitney Houston. But give me some time, stay tuned, and we'll break down this song even further.